I want you to picture a room. It's the late 1960s, maybe early 70s. The lighting is dim, the air is stale, and there's this hum, a low mechanical whirring sound.
Right. And in the center of this room is a man. His name is Jacob. He's an engineer, brilliant with his hands, but a very solitary guy.
And he has built something that, quite frankly, sounds like a prop from a David Cronenberg body horror film.
It really does. It's mechanical, it's cold, and yet it's designed for, well, for the most primal, intimate human sensation you can imagine.
Exactly. So Jacob takes a standard record player, the old vinyl spinners. He modifies the motor. He attaches a metal rod to the turntable. And on the other end of that rod, he rigs up this coil that's wrapped in soft cloth.
And the geometry of it is key. He engineers it so that as the record spins, this coil moves up and down in a very rhythmic motion.
But the real genius of it, and I feel weird using that word for something so disturbing, was the rheostat.
The speed controller. That is the critical component. That's the whole game.
Totally. He wired in a dial so he could control the exact RPMs of the thrust.
Yeah.
And Jacob used this contraption to masturbate. But, and this is the detail that it haunts me, he didn't use it just to finish.
No, that wasn't the point.
Right.
Yeah.
Most people think the goal of the act is the climax. But Jacob, he used that dial to keep himself on the absolute precipice of orgasm, like trembling right on that edge for hours at a time.
He was surfing the wave. He wasn't looking for satisfaction. He was looking for the sustain, the chase.
He would just retreat into this room, isolate himself from the world, and plug himself into this literal masturbation machine.
It's a shocking image, and I think for most of you listening, the immediate reaction is probably distance. You hear about Jacob and you think, okay, that is a bizarre, extreme outlier. That's a pathology that has nothing to do with me.
That was definitely my first reaction. I read that and thought, wow, poor Jacob. Glad I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
But then Dr. Anna Lemke, the author of the book we're diving into today, she does this pivot that just knocked the wind out of me.
Yeah.
She argues that Jacob isn't the outlier anymore. In fact, she argues that Jacob is the prototype.
Because we all have the machine now.
We do. We're holding it in our hands.
And that is the central, deeply uncomfortable premise of the book we are covering today. It's called Dopamine Nation, Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence.
The author is Dr. Anna Lemke. She's a psychiatrist and a professor at Stanford University School of Medicine. She's the medical director of Stanford Addiction Medicine.
So she has seen it all. And her argument is that the smartphone and the entire digital ecosystem it connects us to is the modern universal masturbation machine. It's the hypodermic needle for a wired generation.
Okay, but hold on. I have to play devil's advocate for a second. Jacob was literally hooked up to a piston in a dark room. I'm just, checking my email and looking at funny cat videos. Is it really fair to compare scrolling Twitter to a literal sex machine?
It feels like a stretch. I get it. Until you look at the neuroscience, which we are absolutely going to get into. But just think about the mechanism for a moment. Jacob used the rheostat to control the flow of dopamine, right?
Right, to keep it from dropping.
Never letting it drop, never letting it finish. So what is the infinite scroll if not a digital rheostat? You are just swiping and swiping to get the next hit, the next, and the next, never actually reaching a point of finish. You are egging your brain with information.
Okay, when you put it that way, I feel a little called out. We are all Jacob, just with much better user interfaces.
Exactly. And unlike Jacob, who had to build his machine with a soldering iron and spare parts, ours was given to us in a sleek little glass box.
So the mission for this deep dive feels pretty high stakes. We need to figure out why, in a world that has more entertainment, more food, and more comfort than any other time in human history, why are we all so miserable?
That is the central paradox, isn't it? We are safer, richer, and healthier than any of our ancestors could have ever dreamed, yet rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide are just climbing and climbing.
We're miserable because we have everything.
To understand that, we have to look at the environment we've built. Dr. Lemke calls it the age of indulgence. We have completely transformed the world from a place of scarcity to one of just overwhelming abundance.
And evolutionarily, we're just not built for that. We're built to, hunt for a few berries in a drought, right?
We are built to work very hard for very small rewards. You track a gazelle for 3 days, you finally get to eat. You walk 5 miles, you find a beehive and get a tiny bit of honey. Now
you tap a glass screen and a guy on a scooter brings you a pizza in 20 minutes.
And it's not just food. It feels like absolutely everything has become a drug.
In a way, it has.
Because the definition of what we consume has expanded so much. It's not just alcohol or cocaine anymore. Now it's the news. It's gambling, shopping, gaming, texting, sexting. The list goes on.
And Dr. Lemke identifies 3 specific risk factors. She calls them the 3 drivers of the dopamine economy that make this particular age so dangerous compared to the past.
We should definitely unpack those because I think they really explain why just using more willpower is failing us so badly. The first one is access.
Access.
Yeah, access is the silent killer. Go back to Jacob for a second. For him to use his machine, he had to be in that specific room. He had to be home. There was friction.
Right. There were natural barriers imposed by physics.
Mm-hmm.
If he was at the grocery store, he couldn't use the machine.
Today, the barrier is 0. It's in your pocket. Dr. Lemke uses the opioid epidemic as a case study for this. If you look at the data, the rise in opioid addiction didn't happen because people suddenly became, addictive personalities.
It wasn't a moral failing.
Not at all. It tracked almost perfectly with prescribing rates. Doctors started prescribing them like candy, and addiction rates followed. It was a supply-side shock.
So you're saying just having the bottles in the medicine cabinets created the addicts?
Precisely. When you flood an ecosystem with a dopamine-triggering agent, addiction rates are going to skyrocket simply because of exposure. And you can see the reverse, too. Look at prohibition. We tend to think of it as this big failure.
Yeah, that's what I was always taught.
But Dr. Lemke points out that alcohol-related liver disease, cirrhosis, it dropped by 50% during that time. Why? Because access was harder. You had to know a guy, you had to go to a speakeasy. It wasn't effortless.
So if it's hard to get, we use it less. If it's in our pocket, we use it constantly. Okay, that brings us to the second driver, potency.
This is where our human ingenuity really turns against us. We have engineered everything to be what they call super normal. Take cannabis, for example. In the Woodstock era, the 1960s, the THC concentration in a joint was maybe 3 or 4%.
So it was a pretty mild intoxicant.
Very mild. Today, with modern breeding and concentrates like wax or shatter, you're looking at upwards of 90% THC. It is chemically not the same drug. It's like comparing a sip of light beer to a shot of Everclear.
And we've done this with non-drug rewards, too. I mean, think about video games.
Oh, absolutely. Pong was fun, but it wasn't designed to hijack your limbic system. Modern games are these immersive 4K open-world environments designed by teams of behavioral psychologists to optimize the loop.
They are potency engineered.
100%. Even food. A banana you find in the wild is just a banana. It has seeds, it's fibrous, it's not that sweet. But we've engineered banana flavor that is sweeter, stronger, and more consistent than nature could ever produce.
Which leads right into the third factor, novelty. The brain just loves newness.
It's an evolutionary thing. New meant pay attention. This might be food or it might be a threat.
This is where she mentions the 1,000 banana flavors concept.
Right. So if you eat the same banana every single day, eventually your dopamine response to it drops. It's called habituation. Your brain gets bored. But if today it's a banana cream pie and tomorrow it's banana-flavored vape juice and the next day it's a banana-flavored energy drink, the brain never gets bored.
And that's the infinite scroll again.
It is the ultimate novelty trap. You never know what the next video on TikTok is going to be. It could be a cute cat, it could be a car crash, it could be a political rant. That uncertainty, what neuroscientists call reward prediction error, spikes dopamine like crazy.
So we've got a world of infinite access, super high potency, and endless novelty. And Dr. Lemke wraps this all up in a concept she calls limbic capitalism.
It's a chilling term, isn't it?
It is. Break it down for us.
The limbic system is the reptilian part of your brain. It's ancient, it's powerful, it handles survival, eating, reproducing, fighting. Limbic capitalism is the idea that our entire economy is now fundamentally dedicated to catering to and exploiting that primitive brain.
So companies aren't just selling us stuff we want anymore, they're actually hacking our biology.
They are in a constant arms race for your dopamine. They are continuously refining their products to provoke the strongest possible limbic response. And right now, the corporations are winning because they have the data, and all you have is your prehistoric brain.
Speaking of the brain, let's get into the science. Because to really understand why we feel so crappy all the time, we have to understand the star of the show. Dopamine.
The currency of the realm.
Now, I think most people, myself included, have this pop psychology understanding of dopamine. I eat a cookie, I get a hit of dopamine, I feel happy. It's the pleasure molecule. But Dr. Lemke says that's not quite right.
No, and correcting this one misconception is the key to understanding the entire book. Dopamine is not about the experience of pleasure itself, it's the currency of craving, it's the currency of seeking, of wanting.
Wait, okay, so when I eat the cookie and I go, that's good, that feeling isn't dopamine.
That feeling is more likely your brain's own opioids or endocannabinoids. That's the liking system. Dopamine is the wanting system. It's the molecule that says get the cookie and then do it again. It motivates you to act.
So you can have high dopamine and feel no pleasure at all.
Absolutely. You can just feel frantic desire. This explains why you can scroll on Instagram for an hour, feel absolutely no joy from it, but still be physically unable to stop.
You're in a high dopamine state of seeking without any of the consummatory pleasure.
Wow.
Exactly. Okay, here is the part of the book that really forced me to rethink my life. The connection she draws between pleasure and pain.
This is the core neuroscience of the book. It's so important. Dr. Lemke explains that the brain processes pleasure and pain in the exact same location, and it functions like a balance scale, or a seesaw.
I love this metaphor because it's so visual. Can you walk us through the seesaw?
Of course. So imagine a beam on a fulcrum in your brain. When you're at rest, just going about your day, the beam is level. That's homeostasis. Your brain likes biological stability.
It's level.
Now, let's say you indulge in something. You eat a piece of chocolate, dopamine is released, and that release of dopamine tips the balance to the side of pleasure. You feel a little buzz, a little good feeling.
Great. What's the problem?
The problem is the iron law of biology. The brain hates being tipped. It views that tip toward pleasure as a deviation from stability. It wants to be level at all costs, so it corrects itself.
It pushes back down.
It overcorrects. This process is called neuroadaptation, but Dr. Lemke uses this fantastic visualization for it. She asks you to imagine that as soon as the balance tips to pleasure, the brain sends a squad of little gremlins to jump onto the pain side of the seesaw to stomp it back down.
So they act as a counterweight.
Exactly. But these gremlins are very enthusiastic. They don't just stomp it back to level. They stomp down so hard that the balance tips over to the side of pain for a little while.
And this is the come down. This is the hangover.
This is the hangover. This is the irritability you feel when you finally put your phone away. This is the Sunday scaries after a weekend of partying. That feeling isn't just the absence of pleasure. It is an active, physiological after-reaction, a payment created by your own brain to counteract the high.
So the price of pleasure is always pain.
Always. There is no free lunch in the brain. But here's where it gets so much worse. If you just wait, the gremlins eventually get bored and hop off, and the scale goes back to level. You're fine. But what do most of us do the second we feel that little tip into pain?
We take another hit, we eat another cookie, we click next episode.
Right, we try to force the scale back to the pleasure side. But the brain is smart. It sees what you're doing. It says, oh, you're pushing harder. Well, we need more counterweight. So it sends more gremlins. And not just more, but bigger, stronger gremlins.
They start building a base camp on the pain side of the seesaw.
They literally do. Biologically, this is your brain downregulating its own dopamine receptors. It's effectively turning down the volume because the noise from all the stimulation is too loud. This leads directly to tolerance.
Meaning I need more of the drug just to get the same effect?
Yes, because you are now trying to tip a scale that is already weighed down by a massive army of gremlins. The initial tip toward pleasure becomes shorter and weaker, but the after effect, that swing to the pain side, becomes stronger and lasts longer.
And if you keep doing this, if you do it for months or years like Jacob did,
you enter a state that she calls anhedonia, or the dopamine deficit state.
This is the heavy side of the scale.
I want you to picture the seesaw now. You have a whole army of heavy gremlins camping out on the pain side permanently. Your resting state, your baseline, is no longer level. Your resting state is tilted toward pain.
So you just feel bad all the time.
You are chronically irritable, anxious, and depressed. You can't feel joy from normal things anymore, like a sunset or a conversation with a friend, because your scale is fundamentally broken.
And the real tragedy is, at that point, you aren't even using the drug to get high anymore.
No, not at all. You're using the drug just to briefly lift those heavy gremlins up so you can feel normal for a few minutes. Oh. You are not chasing pleasure. You are running from pain.
That is a terrifying thought. It completely recontextualizes addiction for me. It's not about having fun. It's about managing a broken internal balance. There's a quote in the book. The paradox is that hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure for its own sake, leads to anhedonia.
It's profound. By chasing happiness so aggressively, we literally make ourselves chemically incapable of feeling it.
Now, you might think, a Stanford psychiatrist who writes about this stuff would be immune to it. She
Mhm.
understands the mechanism so she can outsmart it, right?
You would think so. But the patient section of the book is one of the most compelling and honestly brave parts because
Mhm.
she admits she is right there in the mud with the rest of us.
And she wasn't addicted to heroin or gambling. She got addicted to romance novels.
And not even like high literature. We're talking Twilight.
Twilight was the gateway drug. I love this detail so much.
It sounds funny, but if you actually look at her behavior, it follows the exact same pathology as a severe drug addiction. She started with Twilight. It hit that sweet spot of escapism and dopamine. But then what happened?
Tolerance.
Tolerance. The teenage vampires just weren't doing it for her anymore. She needed more potency. She escalated from generic romance to full-blown erotica. She describes searching for these hyper-specific subgenres like vampire were creature, time travel, shapeshifter, romance.
She needed that extreme novelty and graphic content just to get the same dopamine hit.
And let's talk about the delivery mechanism, because for Jacob, he had to build a whole machine. For Dr. Lemke, all she needed was the Kindle.
The Kindle was her hypodermic needle.
Absolutely. It removed all the friction. She didn't have to go to the library and look a librarian in the eye while checking out a steamy book with a Fabio on the cover. She could download it instantly. She could hide the cover.
And she admits to reading these books at work.
This was the moment in the book that really struck me. She describes bringing her Kindle to the clinic. In the 10 minutes she has between seeing patients who are there to get treatment for their addictions, she is frantically reading erotica to get a hit.
It's the ultimate hypocrisy, but it's also just so human.
It completely validates the idea that this is not a moral failing of weak people. This is a biological mechanism that can trap anyone, even a world-renowned expert on the subject.
It's true. If a Stanford psychiatrist can get hooked by her Kindle, we should all be a little more forgiving of ourselves, but also a lot more vigilant.
She describes staying up until 2 in the morning, reading 50 Shades of Grey, ignoring her husband, ignoring her kids, just completely checked out, and having this moment of clarity where she realized, I am an addict. I am no different from my patients.
So if the gremlins have taken over and your seesaw is broken, what do?
No.
We can't just stay miserable. Dr. Lemke lays out a practical solution, and she uses the acronym Dopamine to structure it.
It's the framework she uses in her clinic. It's very practical. We can walk through it.
Let's do it. D is for data.
This is step 1. You cannot fix what you don't measure. Most of us are in a state of deep denial about our consumption. We tell ourselves, oh, I just checked my phone a little bit. No, the data says you check it 400 times a day.
She tells the story of Delilah, a teenager who was smoking weed every day.
Right.
And Delilah was convinced she was just a casual user.
Right. She had this whole story she told herself. But when Dr. Lemke had her actually log it to look at the cold, hard data, Delilah was shocked to realize she was high for almost every single waking hour. Denial thrives in the dark. Data turns on the light.
Okay, next is O for objectives. Why are you using this thing?
This seems counterintuitive, right? We're trained to say, drugs are bad, just stop. But Dr. Lemke says you have to validate that the drug does something for you. It solves a problem. It has a function.
For Delilah, the weed was for her anxiety.
Exactly. For Dr. Lemke, her romance novels were an escape from the emotional burden of her very difficult job. If you don't understand the objective, the real reason you're reaching for that thing, you can't find a healthy replacement for it. You have to respect the drug before you can leave it.
Then P is for problems.
This is the other side of the ledger. What are the downsides? For Delilah, her grades were tanking, her relationship with her parents was a disaster, she was totally unmotivated. You have to stack the problems up against the objectives and ask yourself, honestly, is this trade-off worth it?
And now we get to the really scary one, the one nobody wants to do. A is for abstinence.
The 30-day reset.
Why 30 days? Why can't I just say, okay, I'll just, only use it on weekends? Why do I have to stop competing?
Ooh, because of the gremlins. Dr. Lemke is very, very firm on this. You cannot achieve moderation while your brain is still in a dopamine deficit state. As long as you are feeding the beast, even a little bit, the gremlins will stay camped out on that seesaw. You need a period of total cessation to allow the brain to re-regulate itself and restore homeostasis.
And she warns us, right, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Oh, yeah. This is the learning curve of abstinence. Weeks 1 and 2 are absolutely miserable.
Okay.
That is withdrawal. The gremlins are angry. They are stomping on the pain side of the seesaw. You will feel anxious, irritable. You might even feel physically sick.
But And this is the promise. By weeks 3 and 4, the sun starts to come out.
The clarity returns. The gremlins realize no more dopamine is coming, so they finally give up and hop off the scale. The seesaw levels out, and suddenly you can enjoy a sunset again. You can enjoy a conversation.
There's such a crucial insight here. You cannot see the true cause and effect while you are still inside the cycle. Delilah was convinced that weed cured her anxiety.
She was. But after 30 days of abstinence, she had this breakthrough. Delilah realized that the weed was actually causing her anxiety. The anxiety she felt every day was really just the withdrawal symptoms kicking in between her hits. But she could only see that clearly once she stopped.
So you have to stop to see clearly. That makes sense. Okay, M is for mindfulness.
This is the tool for surviving those first 2 brutal weeks. It's about what she called urge surfing. When that craving hits, and it will hit like a tidal wave, you don't fight it and you don't give in to it. You observe it.
You treat it like a wave in the ocean.
Exactly. You watch the pain rise, crest, and eventually break and recede on its own. You create some distance. You separate yourself from the sensation. You say, I am noticing a powerful craving, not, I need this right now.
I is for insight. What did you learn during the reset? Like Delilah learning about the true source of her anxiety. And then N is for next steps.
This is the decision point. After 30 days of clarity, do you want to go back? Many people, once they feel what it's like to have a level seesaw again, decide they don't want to lose it. They choose permanent abstinence. Others want to try to reintroduce the substance in a moderated way.
Which leads to the last letter, E for experiment.
Going back out into the world. But this time, you can't just wing it. You need a very clear plan.
And that plan almost always involves the next big concept from the book, self-binding. This is really phase 2 of the solution.
Right. Because here is the hard truth that nobody wants to hear. Willpower is not enough. You cannot fight the gremlins with willpower alone. They are older, they are stronger, and they are more persistent than your conscious, rational brain. You need to build barriers.
She uses the metaphor of Odysseus and the sirens from the Odyssey.
It's a perfect metaphor. Odysseus knew he would want to jump into the sea when he heard the sirens' enchanting song. He knew his future self would be weak and irrational, so he had his men tie him to the mast of the ship before he got there. That is self-binding.
Creating a barrier between your desire and your consumption while you are still lucid.
Exactly. And she breaks this down into 3 types. The first is spatial self-binding, which is about space.
This is just physical distance. If the drug isn't in the room, you can't use it. For Dr. Lemke, it meant banishing her Kindle. She would literally lock it in the trunk of her car or leave it at work so she couldn't access it at home at night.
And there's the story of Oscar, the alcoholic. This one is both tragic and a little bit hilarious. He decided to lock his wine in a file cabinet and gave the only key to his wife.
A classic example of spatial binding. But Dr. Lemke also includes the detail that one day, the craving was so overwhelmingly bad, Oscar broke into his own file cabinet with a pair of pliers.
Which proves the barriers aren't foolproof.
They aren't, but, and this is the key point, the pliers took time. The barrier bought him 10 minutes of struggle and effort, and even though he failed that specific time, usually that delay is enough for the craving to pass. The barrier breaks the automaticity of the habit.
That makes sense. Okay, then there's chronological self-binding, which is about time. Restricting your use to specific windows. I only check Instagram after 8 p.m. Or I only drink on weekends.
This is a popular one, but she says it has a trap. And she tells the story of Muhammad to illustrate it.
Oh, Muhammad, the grad student.
Yeah, a brilliant guy, but a very heavy weed smoker. He tried to bind himself by saying, I will only smoke in the evenings. But what happened?
He spent the entire day just watching the clock, obsessing about 8 p.m. His whole day was just a countdown. And when 8:08 p.m. finally came,
He went hard.
he smoked much higher potency weed to make up for lost time. He would get really messed up, as he put it, to compensate. It's the what the hell effect we see in dieting. You know, I already broke my diet with 1 cookie, so what the hell, I'll eat the whole box.
Right. Finally, there's categorical self-binding. This is about meaning.
This is sorting the world into safe and forbidden. It's the difference between saying, I'm trying to cut back on meat and I am a vegan.
It's about identity.
Yes. Creating an identity reduces decision fatigue. If you are a vegan, you don't have to debate with yourself every time you see a burger on a menu. The answer is just no. It's a categorical rule. It simplifies your life.
But there's a danger here too, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Lemke warns about the deification of the demonized.
That's such a great phrase. If you say, sugar is the devil, you run the risk of becoming obsessed with sugar. You end up building your whole identity around avoiding the thing, which means the thing is still controlling you. You have to be careful that the forbidden doesn't become the center of your universe.
Okay, so we've reset the balance with abstinence. We've built walls with self-binding. Now we get to the part of the book that I found the most surprising and counterintuitive. Phase 3, the pursuit of pain.
This flips the whole seesaw model completely on its head.
We've been saying this whole time that pressing on the pleasure side of the seesaw summons the pain gremlins.
Right. So logically, if you press on the pain side, if you intentionally subject yourself to something difficult or uncomfortable, the brain still wants homeostasis. It still wants to get level. So what does it do?
It summons pleasure gremlins.
Effectively, yes. The brain releases its own endogenous dopamine and endorphins and endocannabinoids to counteract the pain and bring the balance back up to level and even tip it over to the side of pleasure.
So intentionally seeking out pain can trigger pleasure.
Yes. There's a biological phenomenon called hormesis. It's the idea that beneficial stress, a little bit of poison, actually triggers the body's healing and strengthening systems.
But surely the feeling is different from a drug high.
It is vastly different, and that's the point. Drug dopamine is a sharp, intense spike followed by a deep crash. But pain-induced dopamine, the kind you get from a cold plunge or a really hard run, is a slow, steady rise. It's indirect, and it is sustained. It can last for hours. You don't get a high, you get a glow, a feeling of being alert, calm, and capable.
Let's talk about the ice bath guy, Michael.
Michael. He's a real estate mogul, super successful, but he was addicted to cocaine and alcohol. He was a guy who needed intensity. He couldn't just, do calm.
So he swapped the cocaine for cold water.
He did. He found that the intense shock of the cold gave him a similar sense of focus and peace, but without the hangover and the life destruction. But being an addict, he didn't just take cold showers.
No, he went full Silicon Valley biohacker.
He bought a commercial ice machine for his garage. He would sit in a tub of freezing water every single morning. And physiologically, studies show this kind of cold exposure can increase dopamine by 250%. That is comparable to a line of cocaine, but it's healthy and it lasts for hours.
But, and there's always a but, when you talk about addiction, you can get addicted to pain too.
You absolutely can. The seesaw applies both ways. Michael eventually developed a tolerance. He found the still water wasn't cold enough anymore. The body warms up the thin layer of water right next to the skin. It's called a thermal layer. So what did he do?
Not a motor.
He bought a circulating motor, like a little boat motor, to churn the water so it would be relentlessly, brutally freezing. He was chasing the pain to get the dopamine hit.
That is horrifying. It sounds like a form of torture.
It's extreme, but it shows that the brain will adapt to anything. We see this with extreme sports athletes, too, like Alex Honnold, the guy who climbed El Capitan without any ropes. They're often pursuing that extreme intensity just to feel normal functioning dopamine levels in their day-to-day life.
So the lesson isn't go freeze yourself to death. It's that we need to intentionally invite some healthy discomfort back into our lives to keep the balance healthy. We've become too comfortable.
We are cacti in the rainforest, as one of Dr. Lemke's colleagues put it.
I love that metaphor so much.
We are a species that is built for a desert of scarcity. We are built to struggle. When you put a cactus in a rainforest, too much water, too much sun, too much ease, it rots from the inside out. We are rotting in the abundance of modern life. We have to artificially create the desert through exercise, through cold, through difficult tasks to stay healthy.
Now we move to the final piece of the puzzle. We've covered the biology and the practical steps. Now we move to something that feels almost spiritual, though she shows the Pangas backs it up. Dr. Lemke calls it the secret weapon of recovery. Radical honesty.
This is the deep connection between lying and addiction. They are best friends. You cannot have a severe addiction without also having a lying habit. They go hand in hand.
And physiologically, lying is expensive for the brain.
It creates a massive cognitive load. Your prefrontal cortex has to work overtime to keep the story straight. You're always thinking, what did I say to her? Does he know? Did I cover my tracks? When you lie, you are burning precious neural energy that could be used for self-regulation and recovery.
There's the story of Maria in the book. She was a recovering alcoholic, doing great, but then the Amazon package.
The story is so small, but it's so huge. Marie sees a package on the porch addressed to her brother. And she just opens it. She just wanted to peek. It wasn't malicious. But when he asks about it later, she lies. No, I didn't open it.
It's a trivial lie. Doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
But for an addict in recovery, it matters immensely. The act of lying signaled a return to the addict mindset, the mindset of hiding, the mindset of scarcity. She realized that if she kept that lie, she was threatening her entire sobriety.
So she had to confess.
She did. She admitted it to her brother and her husband. And here is the payoff. Intimacy. Honesty promotes intimacy. When we reveal our brokenness, our bad behavior, and we are accepted and loved anyway, that stimulates oxytocin.
The love hormone, the connection hormone.
And oxytocin actually modulates the dopamine system. It makes dopamine firing more satisfying and less frantic. It replaces the cheap, fleeting dopamine of the drug with the rich, sustainable dopamine of human connection. And this brings us right back to Jacob.
Jacob's return. I love this part. It circles back so perfectly.
Jacob had been sober for a while. His wife was back in his life, but they were still living separately. She's helping him move something in the house, and she notices a shower curtain ring is missing.
The same ring he used for his machine all those years ago.
Right. She just casually asks, "Hey, where's the ring?" Now, Jacob has a choice. He could lie. It was years ago. It doesn't matter. He could say it broke or I lost it. But he had committed to this practice of radical honesty. So he looks her in the eye and tells her the truth. "I used it for my machine."
And he's terrified she's going to run screaming. He's revealing the darkest, weirdest part of himself.
He thinks she'll be disgusted, but instead she just hugs him and she says, "Thank you for telling me the truth." That moment of connection, that dopamine hit from real intimacy, was more powerful than the machine ever was.
It's a complete shift in mindset, from scarcity to plenty. Lying is a scarcity mindset. I have to hide who I am to survive. Honesty is a plenty mindset. I am enough. The world is safe enough for the truth.
And that leads directly to the final concept in the book, which is about pro-social shame.
This is interesting because usually we think of shame as this toxic, destructive thing. I'm a bad person. I should go hide in a hole and use drugs.
That is destructive shame. It leads to isolation, which fuels addiction. But Dr. Lemke argues for reclaiming pro-social shame. This is the evolutionary purpose of shame. It's the feeling that says, I have transgressed against the tribe, I have done something wrong, and I need to make amends to stay in the tribe.
So it's not about self-hatred, it's about repair.
Exactly. But it requires the person to be accepted back by the tribe after they admit their fault. We are social animals. We desperately need the tribe to help us regulate our dopamine. We simply cannot do it alone in a world like this.
She tells a really funny and sweet story about parenting that illustrates this perfectly. She stole her kids' Easter candy.
She ate their chocolate bunnies, and then she lied about it.
I don't know where they went. Maybe the dog got them.
But then she felt that nagging pro-social shame, and she sat her kids down and she confessed, "Mommy ate the bunnies, and I lied to you about it. I'm sorry." And it didn't destroy her authority. It actually modeled for her kids that parents are flawed and that this is how we repair a breach of trust.
It made the family unit stronger.
Exactly. It showed that the family is a safe place to be imperfect.
So let's try and wrap this all up. We've covered a lot of ground. We started with the masturbation machine, and we ended with eating Easter bunnies.
Quite a journey.
If we had to summarize the key lessons from Dopamine Nation for everyone listening, what would they be?
Okay, I think first, the relentless pursuit of pleasure will always lead to pain. It's a seesaw. You cannot cheat the balance. Second, recovery has to begin with abstinence. You have to give the brain time to reset.
Third, you have to use self-binding. Build walls between you and your drug of choice. Willpower is not enough.
Fourth, embrace pain. Use hormesis exercise, cold, hard work to naturally and sustainably reset the balance to the side of pleasure. And finally, and maybe most importantly, practice radical honesty. It creates the accountability and intimacy we're actually starving for.
It really makes you rethink the whole phrase, the pursuit of happiness. Maybe the reason we can't catch it is because we're chasing it so hard.
I think Dr. Lemke would 100% agree. In a world that is drowning in cheap dopamine, the only way to find freedom isn't to consume more. It's to restrict ourselves. It's to find what she calls the joy of missing out.
So here's the final question for you, the listener. We all have one. What is your masturbation machine? Is it the phone?
Yeah.
The sugar? The online shopping? The news?
Mm-hmm.
And are you brave enough to unplug it for 30 days?
That's the challenge.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.